April 8th, 1944. 22,000 feet over the skies of central Germany. A B-17 flying fortress named Iron Patience was separated from her formation and bleeding altitude. In the tailgun position, Staff Sergeant Raymond "Razor" Calloway counted what was coming for them. 14 Bf-109s, climbing fast, spreading wide. Standard doctrine said wait, let them commit, conserve your rounds, pick your shots. Calloway had spent 2 years watching men die following standard doctrine. He didn't wait. What happened in the next 4 minutes has never appeared in a Hollywood film, was barely mentioned in official after-action reports, and was unknown to the American public for decades. But inside every tailgunner training manual, printed by the 8th Air Force after the summer of 1944, the fingerprints of Raymond Calloway are on every page. This is how a coal miner's son from eastern Kentucky changed the rules of aerial combat, and why the Germans started putting his bomber's tail number on their blacklist. Raymond Calloway grew up in Harlan County, Kentucky, where the mountains were steep, the mines were deep, and the men who worked them learned one truth early. Underground, there is no room to retreat. His father descended into the earth 6 days a week. His uncles did the same. Raymond did it starting at 15, side by side with grown men, hauling coal through tunnels so narrow you had to turn your shoulders sideways to pass. You learned fast that panic killed you. Stillness killed you too. What kept you alive was reading what was coming before it arrived. The groan of a timber, the shift in air pressure, the way dust moved. Raymond Calloway transferred those instincts to the sky. He enlisted in 1942, 2 weeks after his 19th birthday. The Army Air Forces had him scheduled for ground maintenance. He submitted a transfer request for aerial gunnery school 3 times before it was approved. The evaluating officer's note on his final application read, "Applicant is unusually persistent, may be suited for the position." He graduated first in his class, not on accuracy scores, but on reaction time. Calloway could track a moving target and open fire an average of 1.3 seconds faster than any other trainee his instructors had ever clocked. One evaluator called it unsettling. Calloway called it simple. You don't aim where they are, you aim where they're going. In February 1944, Calloway was assigned to the 381st Bombardment Group at Ridgewell, England. His B-17, Iron Patience, had completed 11 missions under her previous crew. She had a reputation for absorbing punishment and bringing her men home. 3 mechanics, 2 repaired oxygen lines, 1 replaced rudder assembly. The tail gun position had seen 2 gunners in 11 missions. Neither had finished their tour. Calloway volunteered for the position the day he landed. The aircraft's pilot, Captain Walter Bream, interviewed him personally. Bream was 26 and looked 40. 11 missions did that. "You've read the position stats," Bream said. "I've read them," Calloway replied. "Then you know what you're volunteering for." "I know what happens to men who wait to get hit," Calloway said. "I'd rather be the one doing the hitting." Bream studied him for a long moment. "I've heard that before. Usually from men who end up in the statistics." "With respect, Captain," Calloway said, "those men were reacting. I don't react." Bream assigned him to the position. Calloway's first 2 missions were unremarkable by the brutal standards of 1944. His third was not. March 22, 1944. Target, rail marshalling yards outside Frankfurt. Heavy fighter resistance expected. 45 minutes past the German coast, 8 Bf-109s rolled in from the 4 o'clock high position. Textbook stern quarter attack. The German formation was still spreading into their attack geometry when Calloway opened fire. Not at the fighters, at the space between them. He put a 4-second burst directly into the gap where their formation discipline lived, the center point every coordinated attack depended on. No pilot in that formation could ignore tracers passing through their assembly point. 3 fighters immediately broke hard left. 2 more peeled right. The coordinated attack became 8 individual aircraft making individual decisions. Callaway picked them apart one by one. The mission debrief afterward lasted an hour. Crew members described what they saw. 2 fighters confirmed destroyed, 1 probable, 5 broken attack runs that never reached firing position. The intelligence officer reviewing the report wrote one line at the bottom: "Gunnery approach merits further attention." Callaway spent his evenings that March studying, not the fighter pilot memoirs or the combat manuals. He studied the attack patterns themselves, the geometry of what German fighters did versus what American doctrine expected them to do. The Germans were precise, coordinated. Their formations had an internal logic, a lead element that drew defensive fire, support elements that exploited the distraction. It was a system that worked because American gunners were trained to react to it. Callaway identified what he called the moment of commitment, the 3 to 4 second window before a coordinated attack locked into its final approach vector. Before that window, formations were still organizing. After it, they were committed and nearly impossible to divert. Every American gunnery doctrine trained men to engage after commitment, to wait until targets were certain, to conserve ammunition for definite hits. Callaway concluded this was exactly backward. Hit them before commitment, and you don't fight 14 fighters. You fight 14 confused individuals making split-second decisions under fire. He wrote his theory out longhand on 3 pages of notebook paper. He showed it to Captain Bream, who read it twice without speaking. Then he said, "I'll give you 1 mission to try it. If we go down, I want you to know I'm blaming you specifically." "Fair," Callaway said. The morning briefing for the April 8th mission came at 0430 hours. Target: an aircraft components factory outside Kassel, deep in central Germany. Intelligence predicted heavy fighter opposition. The Luftwaffe had been repositioning units specifically to defend industrial targets in this corridor. Iron Patience lifted off at 0612. Formation assembly over East Anglia. The climb to altitude. The English Channel below, then gone. The call came at 0911. Fighters, 6 o'clock. 14 bandits, climbing. In the tail position, Callaway didn't look at 14 fighters. He looked at the space between them, the way they were spreading, the center of gravity of their formation. He opened fire at 1,800 yards. The rounds had essentially 0 probability of hitting anything at that range. That was not the point. 8 lines of tracer fire crossing through a formation's assembly center at 1,800 yards produces 1 instant, involuntary response in every experienced pilot. The gunner has already found our formation center. 3 fighters broke. The attack pattern fractured. "Callaway, what do you—" Bream's voice on the intercom. "Watch," Callaway said. The Germans reformed faster than he expected. These were experienced crews, veterans. They adjusted quickly, came back in 2 groups, 8 high, 6 low. Splitting his attention. Classic counter to aggressive defense. Callaway made a decision that would later become a training doctrine principle. He ignored one group completely. He put everything into the high group. 8 fighters, 4 of them committed to their run. He walked fire across the leader, then the wingman on the right, the one holding perfect formation geometry, predictable, not yet focused on survival. The wingman caught 3 seconds of sustained fire. The fighter came apart. The remaining high group fighters scattered. In under 20 seconds, Callaway shifted to the low group, now arriving without coordination because their partner element was gone. He caught 2 more in the chaos. "Splash 2, the radio operator said, voice cracking. Callaway just splashed 2 more. With 4 confirmed kills and the remaining 10 fighters regrouping at distance, Calloway checked his ammunition. He'd expended more than any doctrine allowed. His crew chief would have something to say about that on the ground. But the mission was only halfway complete. What came 15 minutes later was the real test. German radio had relayed what was happening. A full Staffel, 12 fighters, joined the 10 already shadowing Iron Patience. 22 aircraft against one bomber that had drifted from formation. Standard response: get tight, survive, hope for escorts. There were no escorts in range. Calloway asked Captain Bream for 30 seconds of silence on the intercom. He watched the German formation organize at distance. He saw the moment they established their attack vectors. He saw the precise second before commitment. He fired everything he had left into the center of the formation. Not targeting aircraft, targeting the idea of coordination. Later, German after-action reports captured after the war would describe this engagement with something approaching bafflement. A single defensive gun position had disrupted a multi-element coordinated attack by engaging before vectors were established. The tactical recommendation was stark. Do not conduct standard stern attacks against formations with active aggressive tail gunners. Approach angles must be changed. The day's final count: 9 confirmed kills, 3 probables, 0 American casualties. 4 minutes of sustained combat. Iron Patience landed at Ridgewell at 15:24 hours. Calloway climbed out of his tail position and sat down on the tarmac. He didn't celebrate. He checked his hands, steady, and accepted a cigarette from the crew chief, Sergeant Franklin Oakes, who had already begun counting damage and ammunition expenditures. "You used nearly everything," Oakes said. "I used what the mission needed," Calloway replied. 9 confirmed kills, 3 probables, 11 bullet holes in the aircraft. No casualties. The number traveled through the bomb group before dinner. By the following morning, Ridgewell had visitors, other gunners from the 381st, wanting to understand what had happened in that tail position. Within 48 hours, word reached 8th Air Force headquarters. A senior gunnery officer arrived to conduct a formal interview. He listened to Calloway explain the theory, the formation center, the moment of commitment, the deliberate targeting of coordination rather than individual aircraft. The officer sat quietly for a moment. Then he said, "You're describing a doctrine." "I'm describing what works," Calloway said. "Those are the same thing," the officer replied. Over the following months, Calloway was pulled from combat rotation and assigned to develop what the 8th Air Force would formally designate as aggressive engagement protocols for defensive gun positions. He was reluctant. He requested 3 times to return to his crew. Each time, he was told the same thing. "Your crew has 9 men. We have 9,000 men who need what you know." Calloway built a curriculum from first principles. First, engage before commitment. A fighter pilot making a split-second decision mid-approach is not the same threat as one locked into a finalized attack vector. Second, target the geometry, not just the aircraft. Formation discipline is fragile. Disrupt the center, and individuals revert to survival instincts. Third, psychological pressure compounds. A gunner who opens fire early, even at low probability of hitting, forces every incoming pilot to allocate attention to survival before allocating it to attack. Fourth, accept lopsided ammunition mathematics. 20 rounds fired early, preventing an attack, cost less than 200 rounds fired late, trying to survive one. Fifth, the goal is not kills. The goal is disruption. A bomber that lands with no hits and no kills still won. A tail gunner who exhausted his ammunition, preventing 12 attack runs, achieved more than one who saved his rounds and got shot. He trained 240 gunners between April and August 1944. Casualty rates in trained positions dropped. Attack completion rates by German fighters against formations with Callaway-trained gunners dropped further. The Luftwaffe noticed. After the war, military analysts compared bomber loss rates across the 8th Air Force. In the first quarter of 1944, before aggressive engagement protocols reached wide adoption, average bomber losses ran at approximately 13 per thousand sorties on high opposition missions. In the third quarter of 1944, after trained gunners were distributed across formations, that number had dropped to roughly 7.5 per thousand on equivalent missions. The difference wasn't better aircraft. The Germans were flying the same Bf-109s and FW-190s they'd been flying all year. The escort fighter program helped, but analysts who isolated formations without escort found the same downward trend in attack completion rates, the percentage of initiated attacks that actually reached firing position. German fighters were breaking off more, starting attacks and abandoning them, choosing different targets. Captured Luftwaffe training documents from late 1944 referenced American tail gunner aggression explicitly. One internal assessment recommended that German pilots avoid direct stern approaches entirely against formations displaying early engagement fire patterns. The document used a phrase that a post-war translator rendered as, "They shoot first now." They did. Raymond Callaway taught them to. Raymond Callaway returned to Harlan County after the war. He took a job surveying land parcels for a county government office, work that, he told a colleague once, suited him because it was about reading terrain before you walked into it. He didn't talk about the war in any public way. In 1961, a military historian researching 8th Air Force gunnery doctrine tracked him down through pension records. Callaway agreed to one interview. It lasted 90 minutes. He answered every question with characteristic economy. When the historian asked how he'd discovered aggressive engagement theory, Callaway said, "I grew up underground. You learn to read what's coming before it arrives, or you don't come back up." When asked if he considered himself responsible for saving lives, Callaway paused. "I consider myself responsible for figuring out what worked. The men who flew after me are responsible for having the nerve to actually do it." The historian's book was published in 1963. Raymond Callaway appears in 11 pages. He died in 1991 at the age of 68. His obituary in the local paper listed his military service in one line. It mentioned he was survived by his wife Dorothy, 2 sons, and a daughter who had become a school teacher. It did not mention April 8, 1944. It did not mention 14 German fighters and 4 minutes. It did not mention the 240 gunners who learned to shoot first, or the bombers that came home because of them, or the men inside those bombers who had wives and sons and daughters of their own. Some histories end in obituaries. Others end in doctrine. Raymond Callaway's ended in both. The principles Raymond Callaway developed in the spring of 1944 did not disappear with the B-17. The core idea that the most dangerous defensive posture is an aggressive one, that disrupting coordination before an attack forms is more effective than surviving one, spread through military aviation thinking for the rest of the century. You will find it in fighter escort doctrine, in naval aviation training, in modern missile defense philosophy, where the concept of early engagement to break incoming coordination is foundational. It started with a Kentucky coal miner's son who noticed that everyone around him was waiting to get hit and decided not to.